Jonathan, thank you so much for agreeing to talk with me today. And we're going to reflect a little bit together on the whole process around the formation of a Minster community, but also your role as the first oversight minister that we have in the diocese. Because I remember April 2023 when I
Yes.
came along to officially launch Launde as a Minster community. But I was very conscious that that had come after a long process of discussion between the churches. And am I right? Is it 26 churches, I think, in Launde?
Yeah, there are 24 parishes,
Yep.
33 churches.
Okay.
But some parishes have peculiar makeups, so yeah,
Yep.
that are unique to their locality or whatever. So yes, 24 parishes, of which that's the deanery. 17 are part of the Minster community at present,
Yep.
and we very much hope that the others will join in. We know that some do want to join, and hopefully they will join in time. We have one or two who are still standing on the edge looking in, but we involve them. We make sure we involve them in everything we can do, and the invitation is always there. Yeah.
That's brilliant. So just tell us a little bit about the process of formation then. What are your sort of recollections of that that first year that you had facilitating those conversations?
It seemed like many meetings. It probably isn't as many as people recall, actually. But for some of our parishes, it was the first time they'd really spoken in depth and shared in depth with any other parish. They may have joined together for deanery services or local events, but first time ever in real depth to what is life and ministry and mission like in our locality. What are our joys and struggles? What are the things we almost daren't share with anybody else because it's either too big a vision or too embarrassing, you know. So it's the first time I think some of those conversations had happened. So it was a case of helping to facilitate those. Some really good resources from the diocesan sort of team to help us. Sometimes we had to interpret those for local context, and also feedback to those who had written the resources, saying this one doesn't quite land very well, or people are finding it difficult to understand how it might relate into their context. So it was really a helpful dialogue, really, between the diocesan support team in their various forms and local parishes. But conversation, and and meeting together, they were the key components.
So very much a sense of getting to know one another through that process, and I mean, I love that sense of going deeper in the conversations and actually getting a better understanding of the different churches and their different nature and identity and so on. And I remember, it was a very joyful service when I came along, and a lovely sense of each church bringing along a sort of symbol to sort of represent themselves within this newly formed Minster community. I'm conscious that there have been sort of real joys within that, but also real challenges. So let's start with the joys, though. Let's start with what has emerged since the Minster community has now been operating for 9 months. What's brought you joy in all of that?
Well, I'll start with the most recent run. Really, it was a couple of weeks ago now, and people who might listen to this might think, "Why is that a joy?" But we had a meeting of treasurers. We had 8 treasurers from across the Minster community, and about another 7 or 8 who sent their apologies. So there's genuine reasons why they couldn't join us. So we heard from everybody, which is a start. And we were joined by Phil Leach, Generous Giving, and we had an open conversation about our church finances, what it's like being a treasurer, what's going well, what have we tried, what isn't working. Phil gave us a bit of a breakdown of diocesan finances, but not in the context of, so you need to give us more money. It's kind of, we're just sharing, being honest. And we had an hour and a half of conversation, which is going to lead to a couple of proposals that we put to the Minster community about some very simple, well, they will eventually be simple. At the start, they're complicated, but how could we work together across the Minster community to support our making sure our parishes are financially well run, so we're not needlessly replicating some of our efforts and things like that. So it was a really positive meeting. Most of the treasurers didn't know each other, and it was the first time ever that we had such a group gather, and we're going to do it again later in the year. So it's just a very simple, really. It's not interrupting people's patterns of worship or who's going to lead them or their own sense of mission or theology or anything. It's just a practical, we can get treasurers together to support each other and to maybe look at starting some shared work. We're beginning to see some of our smaller, more fragile churches, and they're all small churches in because the area we're in, but some of these smaller churches are beginning to feel, and I think, a bit more confident in working and partnering with other churches locally, partly because we're being asked to work together. So we have a little, I wouldn't necessarily call it a church plant yet, but we're working on something in the Langtons for families, and we have a family who join us from the village of Welham, which is about 5 or 6 miles away, and they worship there, and they join us once a month in our home, because suddenly that kind of dual belonging is encouraged, because we are working together as parishes, as churches, and so why wouldn't we encourage that? Yep. You can belong to your local church, but also you can belong and help to form something else that complements that. So I think we're seeing that beginning to emerge in parts of the Minster community, because why wouldn't you? If you're saying we're a community of churches, why wouldn't you start to support each other in that way? So the village of Church Langton, where we live, a few members of the church came to me just before, it was in November, so it was only a month before the service, and said, now we're working in this new way with our schools through Growing Faith, and also I think through the Minster community, could we offer a Christingle service? We've not done one in many years. So in my work with Growing Faith, I work with our four church schools very closely, and as a result of that, we were able to work with Church Langton Primary School in preparing resources for and hosting a Christingle service, and we had about 70 or 80 people come to that. And again, families came from across the local villages to that, because it's not just seen as a St. Peter's Church Langton activity. It was seen as the church and the school, and I think the Minster community locally at work. So that was really good. And then we had a school-led carol service in an evening before the week before Christmas. But again, never been tried before. Led by the school, by the juniors, and I think we stopped counting at about 250 people. We kind of, it got to the stage where you end up thinking, I'll give up. So we estimate, but that was a lovely service as well. So
just lovely to hear those examples, and that last one in particular, that you said school-led carol service. Yes. So it was a perfect example in the sense of what Growing Faith is yes. about of the church and the school, and then households all coming together, yes. And with the children taking something of a lead in that.
Yes, they did. Well, I worked with the music teacher and a few of the classes in helping to sow the seed of what they might do in the service, gave them some resources, and then really left it to them. And it was it's fantastic. And we find that we have 4 church schools in the Minster community. The smallest one only has just under 60 children, but they come from 8 parishes. So that raises a natural question of how could we as 8 small tiny parishes work with the school in growing faith, and actually being an example of how we can work as a Minster community as well as a work of growing faith. Because why wouldn't you do that if the school is that central location for those households to gather? Why wouldn't you seek to work with the school and encourage the school and bless the school and see what might emerge through that community?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, that's really lovely, Jonathan. And for me, obviously, that's is a lovely sign of what we've always been hoping for with Minster communities, the sense of, well, first of all, your example of the treasurers, and that sense actually of people feeling more supported, people who were sort of isolated before, but now coming together and supporting one another. But then also this sense of new things being possible because of churches working together. So thank you for that. I mean, I'm very conscious that obviously it's still early days and these are the small beginnings. And we're focusing now on the joys. Of course, there have been big challenges on the way as well. Be honest with us. Yeah, tell us something of the challenges there as well.
There are some, as we say, ecclesial challenges and some personal challenges. I'll start with the ecclesial ones. I think for many of our churches, they've never felt the need or never been asked to work in this way before. So articulating the sense of their purpose and why they're here and how they see the future looking, and being open about the what they might sometimes feel is a lack of resource or a lack of leadership or sadnesses of the past or doubts of the future. I don't think many of our churches have been asked or been equipped to look at some of those questions before. And so we've had the challenge of, over the last year, using some descriptors, some church descriptors, asking our parishes, who are you? Who are you? And therefore, where do you feel you're being led? Where is God at work? And sometimes parishes would say, well, we just want to open up on a Sunday and have a priest who leads us. We've not really gone down this line of questioning before. So that's a challenge, but it's a good challenge, and you can see the difference that starts to make. I think we're living in a time of a perceived lack of resource, or we've never quite got enough for what we'd like to be doing. I think the Minster community conversation challenges that a little, which can be a bit uncomfortable, because you're asking parishes to say, well, what if it was down to us? What are we going to do? How deep do we want to go in our faith and our Anglican identity or our discipleship, or however we want to phrase it? How deep are we prepared to go together and share with other Christians in other communities around us? That is a challenge. We open ourselves up to. We might not always appreciate the answers that come back to us, but I think that needs to happen as we look to work together and explore the future. So that's a challenge. There is a challenge of you have some churches saying, well, why won't the bishop just tell us what to do? And other churches saying the exact opposite. And you're trying to get them to meet in the middle and take some responsibility for their own future and direction. So we have some who say there's not enough guidance and leadership from the wider church, and others who are saying there's too much. We just want to be left alone. So you kind of hold that sort of tension a little. There's communities with anxiety about the future, that as they share and open and be open about who they are and where they find themselves, that allows them to say, we don't know how long we can stay open or worship for in this way. And I'm aware that I don't have an answer to some of those questions, other than let's explore it together. So that's a challenge. And then more personally, I think I found that I wasn't expecting this, because I had a diocesan role beforehand, so supporting fresh expressions and pioneers, but I sometimes feel that I've got a certain lack of belonging. So wherever I go, it feels, and this may be my own perception, that the parishes involved might say, that's rubbish, Jonathan, what are you talking about? But it feels like I'm always somewhere as the either Oversight minister or area dean, because there's a little gap in the schedule, so somebody's needed, or growing faith enabler. I don't have my own parish or benefice. I don't. I'm always a guest somewhere, which is fine, but that is costly. It means that the family, we're slightly rootless in our own sense of belonging. We've got a few projects we've got up and running for households linked through growing faith and being a Minster community, but they're in the early stages of starting. So you're kind of trying to create a community rather than belong to one, if that makes sense. So that's a challenge. And realizing that as Oversight Minister and growing faith enabler and everything else, it would be very easy to start running my life and my ministry as a local incumbent, and end up generating hopefully a very fruitful and wonderful local ministry, but ends up replicating maybe what we're trying to not move away from, but change for the future, because that would not be sustainable for the Minster community.
Yeah.
My role is to enable others, encourage others. Well, let's do it together. Let's work together. And one of the ways that helps, we have a monthly gathering at Launde Abbey for all those involved in leadership, all those who feel a heart for the Minster community, just to gather for a bit of worship and looking at scripture. Every month we do that, and then every month we also have what was the sort of the group that investigated becoming a Minster community from the churches. We have changed that to being an oversight group really now, so we continue to meet monthly to road test ideas and thoughts and to check in what the different parishes are feeling, and it gives a useful place for me to kind of share and to test things, and it means any proposal we make probably doesn't come from myself and Jane Lewis, the other area dean. It would come from the kind of that oversight group. This is what we've been thinking about. This is what we would like to suggest that we do. So that helps a little bit, but yeah, it's a challenge not belonging anywhere particularly.
Absolutely, and it's something that resonates with me, because yes, that's a similar thing for me. I think I'm very conscious. People often think that I spend all my time at the cathedral, but I don't spend my Sundays out and about in the diocese at different churches every Sunday. And yeah, I know what you mean in that sense of feeling slightly rootless, and therefore having to build other support structures to help you. And it's good to hear about that sort of oversight team that's developing. And I had a lovely example as well of joining the Launde Minster Community online service
Yes.
a few weeks ago, which for me was a lovely example again of I mean, something new that developed through the pandemic and lockdown, but also that's continued on now, and it is lay-led. So I'm very conscious that it's run by lay ministers, and there was a lovely sense within the service actually of lots of different people being involved. So there was no one person running a whole thing, but it was different people all doing different parts of the service, and extraordinarily inclusive in that sense. So I think that, yeah, again, as an example of how you are enabling others in ministry, I thought that was really quite beautiful. So, Jonathan, I'm enormously grateful to you, not just for today and for this very honest sharing of your experiences, but also for all that you are doing, and many others too, to explore this whole new way of being, if you like, as churches working together. I know that has been costly for you and for many others through the challenges of exploring all of this. But I am very encouraged by the beginnings of something new really emerging in all of that. So my thanks to you, my thanks to all involved in the Launde Minster community, and I hope as a result of this, others will be encouraged to explore and to discern more what God is doing through them. My thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.